Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, and today I am talking about some recent releases from Indicator, one of my favorite labels out of the UK. These are almost all Region B locked, but I will indicate if otherwise. But it's a great group of films, some of which are teeing up sort of other films, which I think is great. And I'll start with one of those, and that's Diary of a Mad Housewife. This one from 1970, I want to say. And it is directed by Frank Perry, adapted by his wife, Eleanor Perry, who is an incredible collaborator. This is based on the novel by Sue Kaufman. And it is a very dark comedy about a New York housewife who is in kind of a rough spot with her marriage. The housewife is played by Carrie Snodgrass, and she does a wonderful job in the film. She is sort of, let's say, treated not so nicely by her demanding husband, played by Richard Benjamin, who is both super obnoxious in this film, but also kind of funny in his ridiculousness. And the other player in the film is Frank Langella, who is a man that the Carrie Snodgrass character has sort of an affair with. But it is, it's a really interesting movie, and it's, it could be tough to watch for some because Benjamin is so ridiculous. He is always yelling her name, Tina, just talking about how his eggs aren't done right, or, she didn't cook the toast long enough, and criticizing, and, he's a gigantic jerk. And so that's, an interesting thing to watch. But what's more interesting is to see how she handles it and kind of see how she navigates New York City during this time, and the places she goes, and her dealings with the Frank Langella character. And then there's a great moment at the end of the film, which I'm not going to talk about, which really gives some perspective on the whole story, which is not part of the book, as I understand. And this is one of the Region B locked discs. It has come out previously from Kino in a Region A locked version. This one has a commentary by screenwriter Larry Karaszewski with film historians Howard S. Berger and Steve Mitchell. That's a good track. This disc has more stuff. It first off has a commentary. There's two cuts of the film. I should have led with that. There's a theatrical cut of the film, which is featured on this disc. And there is a TV version of the film, which is an open matte version, 4x3, taped off television in 1986. And it's, I think, the only known version of that version that exists is taped off by somebody who worked on the film, by Eleanor Perry's old assistant, actually. But I'll get into that in a second. So you get the two commentaries. The first commentary in the theatrical cut is by film historian Lee Gambin and actor Rutanya Alda, who worked with Frank Perry on Mommy Dearest. And she also worked with Richard Benjamin as a director on Racing with the Moon. And she speaks to her experiences on both sets, how she felt about both of the men as directors, and has some insights. And Lee Gambin has some insights on the film as well. I gotta say, I prefer the second commentary. That is on the TV version. That is by official Frank Perry biographer Justin Bozung, and he's obviously done just tomes of research because he's done a book on Frank Perry. And so the TV version is really interesting because it allows him to talk about Diary of a Mad Housewife and giving the differences between the TV version and the theatrical cut, and then bringing in the novel and things that were in the novel. And he's read versions of the script, so he can talk about certain things that were included in the script, and some of those scenes make it into the TV version, and you can kind of see why they weren't cut or they were cut. And so that's fascinating. But he also has just a ton of background on Frank Perry, Eleanor Perry, lots of tidbits about making the film, casting the film, possible alternate casting choices, difference between, like I said, the early drafts of the script, and sort of details about the Perrys themselves and how this film was, not autobiographical per se, but their marriage was not in great shape around this time, and they would separate soon afterwards. And so there's some stuff about that. There's some stuff about where they lived in New York, people they knew in New York, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Also mentions Brief Encounter as one of Eleanor Perry's favorite movies, and how that was definitely an influence on this. And you can kind of see that, But there's really neat stuff about the novel that comes out in terms of the Benjamin character. Some stuff that's left out of the movie in terms of seeing him before we see him in the movie, when he's not a total jerk. That would maybe help the film, maybe not. I don't know. But just lots of interesting stuff, and I really dug that commentary. There is a Richard Benjamin interview. It's about 6 minutes, and it's sort of it ends up being sort of his take on directing and what he learned from directors he worked with. So that's a fascinating thing to hear him talk about dealing with actors and directing, because obviously he's an actor and director himself. And I can't remember if he gets too much into the specifics of Perry, but it is interesting just to hear him talk about, the craft of it and how different directors handle that. There is an interview with Chris Innes that is about 30 minutes, and it is a video appreciation by she's an award-winning editor and filmmaker, and so it's 31 minutes or so. And again, this one goes into, she did a documentary on the making of The Swimmer back at the time, I think, when the film was coming out. So she talks about, and The Swimmer is actually also coming from Indicator very soon. And I'm very excited about their release. I love the Grindhouse Blu-ray, but their release looks to have some more extras, and I just love that film so much that I can't wait to have another version of it. So anyway, she talks about The Swimmer, the rough process for Frank and Eleanor Perry on The Swimmer, and how it was as much a better experience for them on Diary of a Mad Housewife, after The Swimmer. Swimmer was 68, this is 70. And obviously they were sort of fired off of The Swimmer, and Sidney Pollack was brought on, and there's some complications with that film, which I would love to hear more about too in the new Blu-ray. But she also discusses the differences between the novel and the film. She talks about the parallels between the Perry's marriage and how this sort of ended up being kind of a close to their marriage. She has this great bit she talks about a piece I think they wrote for the New Yorker where they were interviewing each other, and you can even detect some animosity then in that piece around that time. I'll let her tell the stories, but they're good stories. She talks about the book The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, and how this book was a key text of the period, and how it was observing and commenting on the role of women post-1950s. This sort of woman is expected to be the housewife kind of thing, and how at this time, we were obviously drifting away from that sort of stringent idea of a woman's role, and how that obviously affected the novel that this is based on. Let's see here. She talks about some things that Eleanor Perry had to cut in the adaptation of the script, like some of the stuff about the Richard Benjamin character and the difference between the book's ending and the added ending sequence for the movie, and it's a really solid release from Indicator, and it has the Larry Karaszewski trailer commentary. It has a limited edition exclusive 40-page booklet with a new essay by Paula Mejia, a profile on novelist Sue Kaufman, and it says extracts from interviews with Frank Perry, Eleanor Perry, Carrie Snodgrass, a look at Snodgrass's relationship with musician Neil Young, who she would go on to marry after this, and an overview of contemporary critical responses. The usual very nice, glossy indicator book. They always do a wonderful job. You have your alternate artwork as well. Anyway, very glad to have this release from Indicator. Next up, we have another one that's gotten multiple releases. This one previously came out from Vinegar Syndrome, and that is Robert Downey Sr.'s film Putney Swope from 1969. A very sort of a touchstone film, that really low-budget film that really caught a lot of attention at the time, and it continues to be influential to this day. It's talking about a Madison Avenue advertising agency wherein the chairman dies unexpectedly, and their only black executive, Arnold Johnson, plays the character, is unexpectedly elected the new boss because the voting never thought anyone else would do. Each person on the executive voting board thought didn't want to vote for themselves or whatever, and decided that nobody else would vote for Putney Swope. That's the character's name. And he gets elected as the boss. And he proceeds to kick out the white majority, replacing them with young revolutionary types, and renames the agency Truth and Soul. And it's sort of this bracing satire, taking potshots at capitalism, power, and racism in America. And it's this sort of key entry in counterculture cinema and a landmark of independent filmmaking, and still very funny. What's really funny, too, is there's multiple things. One is that for whatever reason, I guess Arnold Johnson was having a little trouble with his lines, maybe, and so he is dubbed by Robert Downey Sr. in this really gruff, weird-sounding voice. So that's an unusual choice, but it adds something to the film ultimately. And we get to see the commercials that this company makes, and they're all kind of outrageous. And the film is black and white, but the commercials are often in color, and that's a really interesting contrast. This film is like a huge favorite of Paul Thomas Anderson's, among many others. And, he has a character named Buck Swope in Boogie Nights, and he's just a gigantic Robert Downey Sr. fan. There's actually a Robert Downey Sr. documentary that I think is a collaboration between documentary filmmaker Chris Smith and Robert Downey Jr. That's, of course, his dad, that is making the rounds at the festivals right now, and I hope to see it, when it becomes available, because he's a fascinating American voice in independent cinema, and some of his films are available, but a lot of them aren't quite readily available. There's a Criterion Eclipse DVD box set that has Chafed Elbows and some others that I have. That's about 4 films, but there's some other ones that are like Pound, which is just a surreal take on people pretending to be dogs in sort of a prison / animal shelter. There's all kinds of weird stuff he's done, and it's just crazy. Greaser's Palace is another one that's really interesting. That's available on Blu-ray. But anyway, he's a fascinating filmmaker, and this is one of his most landmark films. This is an all-region disc, and it, I believe, is a different transfer from even the previous Vinegar Syndrome disc. This has 4K restoration by the Academy Film Archive and the Film Foundation. Now, I think that's different. I think it's a new transfer, and it looks good. It has a lot of the old features featured here. There's a lot that were on the Vinegar Syndrome disc, including the audio commentary with director Robert Downey Sr., audio commentary with film critic and historian Sergio Mims, which is great. Interview with Robert Downey Sr., about 16 minutes, an archival conversation where he talks about the creation of the film, the reception of the film, the influence of it. Interview with Gerald Kotz, a 20-minute audio recording of the cinematographer recalling his work on the film. Film Forum Q&A with Robert Downey Sr. from 2016, about 34 minutes. An archival audio recording of the noted provocateur in conversation with Bruce Goldstein at Film Forum. I want to say, does that one play as a commentary on the... I'm trying to remember. No, I can't remember if that does or not. That may be just a standalone audio interview. Trailer commentary by film producer Dan Ireland. And, of course, a limited edition 36-page booklet by, let's see here, that has a new essay by Christina Newland, a writer I'm a big fan of, an archival article on the film originally published in the Los Angeles Free Press, and an extensive archival interview with Putney Swope director Robert Downey Sr. and filmmaker Jonas Mekas, an overview of contemporary critical responses, etc. So, great little booklet. Alternate artwork. So, another sort of landmark from Indicator. They just have a great slate of movies, really. And then changing it up completely, we have one of their special editions here. This is The Creatures the World Forgot from 1971, directed by Don Chaffee. And this is a later Hammer sci-fi monster prehistoric art film. And then that's, I see why they went so kind of gaga over this and made it a really nice release, because I'd never seen this film before. And it is a fascinating movie. It starts like the beginning of 2001, sort of, with cavemen. Also, along the lines of A Quest for Fire, along sort of meeting with 1 million BC, but definitely more gritty and more real. Clan of the Cave Bear comes out later. These are the kind of films it's in the company of. There's no real dialogue in the entire film. It's just grunts and yelling. It's sort of a bit of a slow pace, but really gives a sense of the life of the caveman tribe over many years. Like, there's some ellipses in the film where you get to see this tribe sort of developing. Like, 2 small boys become the leaders of the tribe, and so you're getting generational look at this tribe. There's some gruesome violence, more of an edge than a lot of Hammer films. But again, just the fact that it's a kind of not a silent movie, but there's no dialogue, it really plays more art house. And you just get to see like the tribe is traveling along this sand dune, and a couple of people fall down the sand dune, like way down, and they're having trouble getting back up, and the tribe is just like, sorry, and they're left for dead. It's just like these kind of things happen. There's a lot of conflicts within the tribe itself that we get to see play out, and I just really dug this movie. I thought it was really fascinating stuff. It has a commentary with Kim Newman and Sean Hogan talking about the influence of this film and the kind of more offbeat things that Hammer was doing in the early 70s, changing things up a bit and perhaps coming from a place of desperation. But yeah, that's how this sort of ends up being kind of an art house movie. There is a piece called Signs of Change. Jonathan Rigby, the author of English Gothic, A Century of Horror, 1897 to 2015, revisits this film. He talks about it for about 25 minutes. And there's something called Primitive Rites, which is about 26 minutes, and it's appreciation from Mario Nasimbeni's score by David Huckvale, author of Hammer film scores and the musical avant-garde. So he focuses on the score of the film, which is a really neat, interesting score in terms of instrumentation and tone. But yeah, a fascinating movie. Really nice to see it get such a deluxe box set. This is one of those nice Indicator boxes, and it comes with this has got the actual like bound book. Like, this is a bound, not even just the glossy booklet. It's like a really nice book. And it is 80 pages with a new essay by Julian Upton, profiles of Julie Edge, Don Chaffee, writer-producer Michael Carreras, and archival interview with Hammer's financial wizard Roy Skeggs, and extracts from the film's press book, an overview of contemporary critical responses, etc. Also included, really interestingly, are some short films by Don Chaffee. There's 3 Children's Film Foundation productions. One called Skid Kids from 1953. That's 49 minutes, and it's a story about a group of young cyclists. There's one called A Good Pull-Up from 1953, 18 minutes. It says Dickie Duffel, played by Peter Butterworth, gets himself into trouble at a workers' cafe. And Watch Out from 1953, 18 minutes. Further escapades of Dickie Duffel as he causes chaos in a film studio. And all 3 of these have commentaries from film historian Vic Pratt. And so you get not only a look at those, but also some commentary on those. So that's a really nice extra feature. But yeah, a really nice set. Creatures the World Forgot from the good folks at Indicator. Is the old artwork. So that's good stuff. And then last but not least, we have The Bullfighter and the Lady. And this is continuing a series of Bud Boetticher films. They've put out already at least a bunch of Bud Boetticher, if you include their box set and and stuff. So this is from 1951, and it is about an American sportsman played by Robert Stack who goes to a bullfight sort of while he's on holiday in Mexico and witnesses the great matador that's on display there, and he later meets the guy and becomes entranced by this woman friend of his and is impressed by the world of bullfighting, and seeking to impress the woman, he becomes sort of a pupil to the bullfighter and tries to become a champion bullfighter, more or less. And this one's produced by John Wayne, based on part in Bud Boetticher's own experience as a novice bullfighter. And it was initially released in a short 87-minute cut, reputedly edited by John Ford. But in 1986, with the help of Boetticher and Robert Stack, the complete 124-minute version was restored, revealing the film to be a true masterpiece. Both cuts are presented on this edition, along with Bud Boetticher's final work as a director, the 1985 documentary My Kingdom 4, which is part autobiography, part history of the bullfighting art of Regionio. So it's a documentary. So you get his last film as well on this, and 2 cuts. So you have, in terms of features, we have a wonderful audio commentary with critics and authors Glenn Kenny and Farron Smith Neme. They previously were a duo on the Bogart box set. They did a commentary there as well, which I enjoyed. Really love their way of doing commentaries. It's just very well informed, but certain casualness, but still, really coming through with the information and making it enjoyable. They really do make it enjoyable. So I really enjoy them as a duo. Good track. An Evening with Bud Boetticher from 2001, 89 minutes. And this is an audio recording that plays as a commentary. This is what I was thinking of. It's Boetticher with film preservationist Robert Gitt, talking about, his career and such. He's got a great gravelly voice, and he has some great stories. He's talking about John Wayne and some other stuff. There's just a lot of great stuff in that track from the man himself. The My Kingdom 4 documentary, which is 85 minutes, and sort of, like I said, autobiographical documentary about his retirement years spent training horses, featuring Robert Stack narrating. Then there's A Roller Coaster and a Merry-Go-Round, a 2022 36-minute piece. Mary Boetticher reflects on her love of dancing, her fear of horses, and her late husband's approach to filmmaking. Bud Boetticher One-on-One, 1991, 58 minutes, a career-spanning video interview with him. So you get more Boetticher reflecting on his career. And then we have a 36-page booklet with a new essay by Matthew Thrift. And an archival profile of Mexican actor Katie Jurado, and an overview of contemporary critical responses. Again, these booklets are really lovely. Just feel good. You have alternate artwork as well. Might switch that around. I don't know. But yeah, a nice release, and I love the continuing attention they give to Bud Boetticher as a director. One of my favorites of Westerns and such of this period. Just a great, scrappy director that, you know, if you follow all their releases, you really get a sense of all that he did and how sort of important he was in the filmmaking work he was doing. And so neat you get his last film on this disc, as well as Bullfighter. So that will do it for this round of Indicator releases. Definitely head over to powerhousefilms.co.uk to check out what they've got coming. They've got all kinds of exciting things in the work. They have, you know, box sets, and like I said, The Swimmer. They have Santo Films, you know, box set, The Big Gun Down, the Magic, Myth, and Mutilation, the micro-budget cinema of Michael J. Murphy box set, which I cannot wait to check out. That sounds fascinating. And, of course, Universal Noir #1, their first in a series of Universal noir films. They had done the Columbia Noir sets up through Volume 5, and they may do more, I don't know. But Universal is now in the #1 slot. And, of course, The Swimmer also coming. So lots of great stuff to look forward to from Indicator. Definitely the kind of label that makes you have to get a multi-region player if you don't have one. And if you don't have one, head over to 220 Electronics. That is my big recommendation for folks to get a very affordable. I want to say they have one in the $120 to $140 range, a Sony player that you can pick up that is multi-region, and shipping is free, if I recall. They have higher end stuff. They have 4K players. They have all kinds of good stuff. But that's where I've gotten my most recent multi-region player, and it really does open you up to get a lot of stuff that may or may not get a release in the States. So definitely head over to 220 Electronics to check out a possibility for opening some doors for yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.